to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. Attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of the individual. Please mute your microphones when not speaking. Thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is apologies. I've received no apologies, and I believe the town clerk hasn't received apologies either.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to the first of the public open sessions. A period of 15 minutes is permitted for members of the public to ask questions. Checking on the members of the public participants. There is one I see there, Mr. John Ingray. Mr. Ingray, do you have any questions to ask? Please raise your hand, your virtual hand, if you have any questions. Okay, well, I can't see any indication from you, Mr. Ingray, but I know you wrote to me relating to the access road to the allotments, which will be dealt with later on. It is part of the agenda, so I'll move on. Okay. Next item is minutes of meeting. For members to receive and approve the minutes of the Public Land and Open Spaces meeting held on the 24th of November. So starting in the usual way for accuracy, this is page number 5 in the set. Anything on page 5? Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. That's on page 9. And we're going to matters arising, the same thing. Page 5. Page 6.
If I may, Chairman.
Yep, sorry, Councillor Strong.
Sorry, 5B, item 6A, the Great Outdoor Gym Company. The Public Realm Manager had got quotes and was going to provide those at the next meeting. Are those quotes available?
Town Clerk?
Okay. I don't believe that we have received those quotes, but I would add a further comment if that's okay, Chair. One of the pieces of work that I'll be requesting the new Public Realm Manager to do is a complete and thorough audit of all of our open spaces, rather than focusing on one particular area. So I would like to delay giving any information at the moment connected to the equipment that we currently have, and I would like to do it properly across all of our open spaces, and then get some proper quotations. I think there's some opportunity to modernise in a lot of places.
Okay, thank you. Where were we up to there? Was that page
6?
Page 6 or 7?
6.
Okay. Page 7 then? No. Page 8. Page 9. That's all then. Moving on. Items of consideration. This is point 6A, new Public Realm depot and equipment. Over to you, Mr. Town Clerk.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say to members is to make an apology, and that is for the amount of oral updates that we find on the agenda this evening. This is not what we would normally do. As members will be aware, we have a number of vacancies at the moment, and we're extremely busy. So hopefully you'll get just as good information, But unfortunately, on this particular occasion, I'm afraid it's going to have to be oral updates. I hope you can bear with me in that regard. If we deal with the public realm depot and equipment, myself and Philip, I'll start, Philip, and then Philip can add on some more detail if that's appropriate. First thing to say, members will recall that we signed the initial intention to contract, and I think now looking at Philip, if he could take himself off mute.
Yes.
That signature, if my memory serves me right, it was between 3 and 4 weeks ago that we signed that pre-contract signature. Is that correct, Philip?
Something like 3 weeks ago. I remember, was it not a Friday? I think
Yeah.
Councillor Russell will probably recall.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, the intention to enter into a lease has been signed. Obviously, the lease has not been completed because that's only going to be completed if they build the wall. And members will be aware that they've applied for planning consent. I'm not quite sure why they need it, but I'm sure councillors who are involved with planning will know more about it than I do. But it's an internal wall between the unit that we wish to lease and the adjoining unit. In the meantime, although we don't have a public realm manager, one of the staff on the public realm team, Carl, has been involved with beginning to obtain quotes for various vehicles and other bits of equipment. We're collecting those. I won't go into too much detail, obviously, because where we are at the moment.
Can I interrupt, Philip? Is that okay? Would you mind
Sorry?
if I interrupt with more about it? We just need to remind ourselves of the dates. So the dates that we agreed with the landlord were a minimum period of 2 months from the date of pre-contract, a maximum period of 3 months from the date of pre-contract, in the sense of being able to move in. What we also agreed with the landlord was that the adaptations that are required to make that efficient for our use would be completed whilst we moved in. Yep, we would be doing the thing. The 2 major items of change that need to happen are, number 1, for the land rotations for that. What we've also done, conscious that we now have some sense of a real date to move in, is we have begun to action the decision made by members several weeks ago connected to a broad upgrade of public realm equipment. Members will be aware that they signed that off some weeks ago. So we've now placed physical orders and we've raised purchase orders for that equipment, so that when it arrives, it will be able to go into the new depot. So I'll stop talking about the depot if I can, Chair. I don't know whether members have any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is 6B, the old public realm depot. Over to you, Town Clerk, again.
Thank you. Our colleagues in public realm have been busy in getting ready to move and getting rid of redundant equipment and making sure that our old public realm depot is clear and ready for a potential use going forward. We have had some redundant equipment which we've been able to sell off, and we've had quotations connected to that, so that's happening in the background. We had a suggestion from Councillor Bond that we might wish to use the old public realm depot as a storage facility for a local church's food bank, and I was arranging to go there last week to show them around, but they pulled out at the last minute and no longer require this as a possible place to store their food. One of the things that the council will be doing going forward with members, and it's certainly for officers to look at in the interim, is to try and come up with creative ideas about what might be a good use for the old public realm depot. And members who've been along there will recall what the facilities look like. So we've reached out to members at the moment and we're beginning conversations about who might be a good tenant for this going forward. What I would like to do, ideally, is to try and find a tenant roughly the same time as we move and get out of the old building. So please watch this space and we'll try and come up with some solutions. But equally, if members have any ideas or are aware of any potential tenants, then please could they come forward with that. So again, I'll stop talking.
Any questions on that? Councillor Knight.
Yeah, so I'm quite keen that we try to sort of monetize the old depot to recoup some of the costs, obviously, we have with leasing the new depot. Is it appropriate to get some sort of valuation or appraisal to get an understanding of what a sort of a market rent would be for the old facility in its current form, please?
Yeah, can I respond? Is that okay, Chair? I think that's a very sensible idea, and indeed, looking at Philip, and Philip will be aware of this. One of the things that we're doing with chartered surveyors at the moment is to upgrade our understanding more globally of all of our capital assets for insurance purposes. So that would tie in very nicely to that, Councillor Knight. So we'll make sure that that happens.
Anyone else? I just have one question to add to that. It occurs to me that anyone taking over the building will need to know what services are available there with regard to toilets and electricity and so on and so forth. Will this be included in the specification that we'll be putting out?
Of course, yes. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
make sure. Yeah.
Fine, thank you. We'll move on then to
Councillor Strawn.
one more thing. Sorry, Councillor Mark Foster first.
Councillor Strawn was first.
I beg your pardon. Councillor Strong.
Thank you. What size is the building, i.e. what's the footprint?
I would find that a difficult question to answer, Councillor Strawn. I don't know the meterage of the footprint. I would have to find that out.
A footage would be acceptable, but I understand the answer.
Yeah, I can't answer that question at the moment, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark Foster.
Yeah, my question was really just in relation to, we're clearly not at the stage where we can publicise the fact that the facility is available. I guess once we are aware of that, if the clerk passes that information on, we can then make that information available to the public, which I think will be more helpful and maybe generate a little bit more interest. But as I say, at the moment, we're not at that place, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay, I'll Councillor Foster, I'll make a note to make sure that we share that communication when the time is right.
Okay. Anything further on this? If not, I'll move on to item 6C, flower beds, hanging baskets, maintenance of roundabouts. Again, back to you, Town Clerk.
Thank you. Thank you. So perhaps we could deal with the latter subject first. So myself and Councillor Foster, the Chair, we did a site visit last week connected to the main entrance roundabouts to Biggleswade, both looking from the retail park area and also looking from the Sainsbury's area. And we went around that with public realm staff, just to looking to make sure that proper maintenance was taking place. We extended the area that we would like to maintain, so that we're trying to make it as attractive as possible for people who visit Biggleswade, both for the first time, but also equally for residents. We're also in the process of purchasing additional pots, and we're also in the process of raising the main Biggleswade sign at the Sainsbury's entrance area, so that it's much more visual to people who are coming to Biggleswade for the first time. I think there was a general perception that the roundabouts are not being properly maintained, even when they are adopted by another company. I have spoken to colleagues in Central Beds about this, and we're in negotiation at the moment about how we might go forward. I'm very keen for the roundabouts to be more obviously be maintained, and in some cases there are the foliage on the roundabouts is 3 to 4 foot high, which is in some way making it difficult for people who are driving in to see clearly across the roundabout. So if I can just hover there in regard to the roundabouts, there's certainly an issue there that we need to do better, I think, but we need to work in partnership with our highways agency. I just want to perhaps delay a little while. I don't know whether the chair would want to add to anything that I've just said.
No, I think you covered that pretty well. Thank you.
Okay. Secondly, if we can just pick up the flower beds and hanging baskets. We had three quotations received for the flower beds and hanging baskets, and I think it's okay to say that we now went ahead and our preferred provider was Savins, and we've confirmed that purchase with Savins. They're putting together the hanging baskets at the moment. We've also written and agreed a specification going forward connected to the main flower beds. We're very cognizant, obviously, that we are in COVID times, but we should pay as much attention as we possibly can to making our external environment attractive to everybody, particularly as it's a nice opportunity to go out and get some fresh air. I'm also conscious as town clerk and chief exec that our public realm offer is the most obvious thing to our residents. Yeah, and we want to make sure that we invest appropriately to try and make that as stimulating to the residents as we possibly can. So good progress is being made. We estimate that the flower beds will begin to be populated in the second week of May. The baskets should go up probably about 3 weeks before then. So again, I'll go back to the chair, who was also in attendance when we went through this.
Yeah, we had conversations about the best flowers to include in the hanging baskets. Ryan, who's been with the council 22 years or so and knows most things about growing matters, certainly is well aware of the requirement. And we're going to try and make sure that the right sort of manure or growing element is used to make sure we can get the very best out of all of the material we plant. So it's it's looking good, and I'm looking forward to when they all go ahead. Okay, so in that case, I will then, unless are there any questions on this? Town clerk, do you want to come back?
Just one final comment, if I can, Chair. One of the other things that I'd like to invest an appropriate sum of money in is that I'd like us to be able to maintain our flowers in a better way. So effectively, when we're doing the changeover from the kind of winter display to the more summer display, some of our winter display can effectively be recycled. So I think a couple of small greenhouses might be something that we need to consider going forward. I don't know whether the chair would agree with that.
I very much agree with that. It sort of breaks my heart in a way that the polyanthus plants could just be bunged on the skip, whereas in actual fact, they can be planted and reused again. You lose a few, and that occurs on a number of things. If we had a greenhouse, we could do that. We could also grow our own. There's quite quite an opportunity to do that, to save quite a bit of money that way. Okay. Anything further on that then? Councillor Strawn, you still have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If the town clerk could, I know he's got visions of improving the quality of service that we give. So far as the roundabouts are concerned, would the town clerk be looking at making arrangements with the owners of the roundabouts, i.e. probably the Highways Authority, to actually take a contract so that we will be responsible as a town council for the maintenance of the same? Because I think that's probably the only way we're going to get a quality there. We may not be able to actually deal with the roundabouts without such formality, but if that's the town clerk's intention, perhaps you could confirm that, and I imagine that's maybe what he's talking about with CBC and the Highways Authority.
Town clerk?
Yeah, I can absolutely confirm that that is my intention, Councillor Strawn. Yes, and I think I'd like to be in control of our own destiny. So at least if we're very clear about what's our responsibility, then we can keep on top of it, because it's our community. But at the moment, we've got introductory conversations going on with Central Beds, but I'm sure we'll make progress over the next few weeks.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item then, which is the Saxon Gate, Pocket Park and Biggleswade Linear Wood. Once again, over to the town clerk.
Okay, so firstly, I guess I'm going to make an assumption, a giant assumption, that members are all aware of where Saxon Gate Pocket Park is and Biggleswade Linear Wood. It was a learning experience for me, and I think it was also a learning experience for the chair. We visited very recently.
It certainly was. In my ignorance, I had heard of it, but I didn't actually know precisely where it was. I visited it, and it's quite a nice facility. And Linear Wood is also the same. So it's a great opportunity for us to be involved more with it, and I would be very much in favour of that.
So again, I'd just like to clarify, we are at introductory conversations. The chair and I met with a representative from Central Beds. We did a tour of Saxon's Gate Pocket Park, and we did a tour of the Linear Wood. I've stated to Central Beds that I think we would be very much interested in taking on some form of partnership agreement for maintenance of these areas, subject to us being able to agree commercial terms. I think that the likelihood is that it will probably be that we would be looking at a 20-25 year lease, and we would be taking on responsibility for maintenance, and that Central Beds would then transfer a sum of money to properly recognise that commitment going forward. I think both areas could do with some a little bit more care, in the sense of making them attractive for our residents' use. Saxon Gate Pocket Park is very different to what we currently do. It's a very much of a natural park. It's obviously on the outskirts of town. There are some challenges there, particularly in regard to, unfortunately, a lot of rubbish comes across the road, and it needs to be properly maintained. And there have been some other challenges there in the past as well, which I won't go into today. Linear Wood is very, very attractive indeed. And I think both of these would complement our offer for our local community. So, Chair, can I pass that back to you, because you were with me at the time?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that they're two great facilities. And when we have our team up to strength, it's an additional thing that our team can do, but then helps for the fact that we have an enlarged team to do all the existing stuff that we need to do anyway. So for that reason, I'm very much in favour of it as well. Yeah. Councillor Bond has his hand up.
I asked the clerk who he met as the representative of Central Beds.
A lady called Lindsay, and I can't remember her surname, but yeah, Lindsay Bignell. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Lindsay has already written back to us, Councillor Bond, to confirm that she's escalated our interest through the senior management of Central Beds. Yeah. Can I just make one more comment connected to Saxon Gate Pocket Park? We used to be responsible for its maintenance. We currently aren't responsible for its maintenance. Obviously, we would like a different type of partnership arrangement going forward. In both Saxon Gate and Linear Wood, and indeed going forward, where there is a commercial agreement with either another council or a private contractor, where there is a sense of revenue coming into the council, then I would want to think very carefully about extending our public realm team proportionate to the income coming in, so that we could make as best use as we can of our resources.
Fine. Any other questions on that matter? Okay, moving on then. This is item E, 6E, tree inventory. Town Clerk, please.
Okay. Unfortunately, the tree inventory has not been completed as such yet. It is a priority for our public realm team, but it hasn't been completed. So if members could bear with us a little while longer, as I said, we will ensure that it's being completed. What I have been doing is I've been going around our various assets to have a sense about what needs to be adapted. So, for instance, at the moment at Drove Road Cemetery, we have a tree surgeon coming in to make sure that our trees are properly maintained and that they don't overhang the residence area, particularly to the right-hand side of Drove Road Cemetery. We're also cutting back the trees in the centre part of the cemetery to make sure that it's properly maintained. Hopefully, within the next 6 weeks, we can begin to share with you a broader tree inventory of all of those trees that come under our jurisdiction. But at the moment, the work remains uncompleted.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Sorry, that was a legacy hand. I'll put it down.
Okay. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, for sake of clarification, my understanding was that we'd gone out to a tree surgeon who could prepare a full inventory of our trees, etc. Has that actually happened? And that's what we're waiting? What are we waiting for?
We have gone out to a tree surgeon, but he hasn't completed all of the work. So we wait for that to be received.
So it has happened.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for the report to come in.
Yeah,
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on then. So the next one is the Spinney, Town Clerk.
Okay, so I think there's two updates connected to the Spinney. The first one is I think there might be some misunderstanding within the community. There has been a oak tree felled in the Spinney, yeah, and I'd just like to make it abundantly clear that the members of the Public Realm team did not take this tree down. Yeah, it isn't something that we've been involved in whatsoever. There is a suggestion that the tree has been cut down by someone else in the community. I don't know whom, and that was pointed out to me by our previous Public Realm manager. But I do know there is some misconception out there at the moment. So before I go any further on this, maybe I could just stop talking on this particular bit and see if there's any member questions connected to this.
Are there any questions? Councillor Russell.
I don't know whether it's what the town clerk's referring to, but I have had an email recently about it, and I think I don't know whether others have in the past, but asking what had happened about this, and I've sent a holding reply, so I wait to hear further before I go back to that resident. But she's very upset that the tree has been felled, and the story seemed to be that it had been felled because it was interfering with a property at the side of the Spinney. I have no idea, because I don't know the Spinney well enough to know whether that could possibly be or not. That's all I need to say, I think.
Town Clerk?
I think it's probably appropriate that I have a catch up with the mayor and brief her accordingly, connected to the information that we have. But just to reiterate, the tree wasn't felled by us.
Okay. Anything else to report on the Spinney, Town Clerk?
I think Councillor Foster wanted to raise a question.
But you've nothing else to say on that for the time being?
The only thing I would say connected to the Spinney is, I think, again, one of the things I'd like our new Public Realm manager to look at is how we can use the Spinney more appropriately for the community, so that they can gain the best advantage. And at the moment, I'm not sure that the Spinney is being used in its best possible advantage to residents in the council. So I'd like to suggest that he or she make some recommendations connected to that we can consider.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Foster.
Yeah, I think what I'm really thinking about here is the Spinney is one of our assets. Do we have a list of the assets? Do all members of the committee know what the what the assets are? And I guess more importantly, in relation to this one in particular, do they know where it is? Because it's one of those ones that perhaps a bit like the Linear Wood and the Saxon Pocket Park, we can talk about it, and there might be the elephant in the room there where people are thinking, I don't know where it is, but I don't want to ask. Well, I'm going to ask the question, and for those people that don't know where it is, perhaps the clerk can tell us.
You're putting the wrong person on the spot. I roughly know where it is, Mark, but you're asking the wrong person.
I'm happy to dive in on this. Councillor North is actually in a much better position to answer this than me, but it's off Dells Lane, and it's more or less diagonally opposite, if I remember right, from where Councillor North lives. So as you're going out of town, it's on the left-hand side. There's some sort of grotty green wire fencing that leads into it at the moment. And it's...
yeah, there is also a sign up with a title on it for Bealswade Town Council saying no ball games or something, which must have been there for donkey's years.
Yeah.
But there is also, at precise point, on the right hand, if you're talking about the left hand side is the Spinney, okay. On the right hand side, there is also a strip of grass down there that leads down to the footpath beside the railway line. So that doesn't belong to the town council then, the right hand side piece.
I couldn't tell you. Town Clerk?
I can't answer that second question, but what I can say is my perception from our previous Public Realm manager that the Spinney is a favourite haunt for dog walkers. It is a very quite thin area of land in quite a peculiar place within the town. So it would be nice to see what else we could potentially do with it. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions on this one?
But can I just come back on it?
Foster?
I think it's just a follow-on, really. It's thanks for. I knew where it is. I didn't. It wasn't. I wasn't asking for my benefit. It was just a case. It's one of those ones where perhaps members don't know. But it's. I think it's important, really, to reiterate the point about we as a committee need to know what, and as town councils need to know what our assets are. And I think this is an example of one that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily know about. So I'm sure there is an asset register, but if it's up to date, and perhaps members could be shared that information more readily.
Town Clerk first, then Councillor Knight.
So I can definitely assure Councillor Foster that we do have an asset register, yes. And we're very happy to share the asset register.
Thank you.
Councillor Knight.
The matter of the fallen trees seems very strange. Maybe it's more appropriate to revisit this in the exempt agenda with the chairman's leave. But if one of our trees, which is a town council asset, has been destroyed, that seems like an act of vandalism and something that should be reported to the police.
Okay. Anything further on this? In that case, we'll move on to allotment notice board map and bay and internal road repair, which is one of the things I referred to earlier.
Okay, so firstly, can I ask Sean to go off mute a moment? Sean, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, would you like to start the briefing connected to this?
So both councillors Foster's met with myself and Karen Saunders of our office at the allotments at the end of January to inspect the road leading from the Taylor Wimpey development towards the allotment gates, and then as well the interior road leading from the first site through to the second site. There was significant disrepair to the road from the Taylor Wimpey site up to the allotment gates. Some of that has been repaired by Taylor Wimpey following some involvement by Central Bedfordshire Council. They were very helpful in getting Taylor Wimpey to assist us with repairing some of the road that had been damaged by some of their trucks. To be fair, it's been some time since the road was repaired at all. So it's great that part of the road has now been repaired. There is still a small section which needs a little bit of help, but we're back onto, Karen's been back onto Central Bedfordshire Council to find out what additional assistance can be offered there. The internal road from sites 1 through to the second site is in significant disrepair, and it's very muddy. You know, we've had an above average rainfall this year. So the road is very muddy, very pitted. Our public realm worker that works on the allotments has been struggling to get around the corners because they're very muddy with the tractor that he has. But the road is very pitted, very potholed, and does need some investment in repairing it.
Okay. I think I should make the point that it's understood that the repair of the internal road is the town council's responsibility. And although it's good that Taylor Wimpey are prepared to make some repair to it, that's good news. And hopefully they'll stick to their word and actually make it up to a reasonable condition. We need to ensure as a town council that that road is maintained for our allotment holders. And I'm sure that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Any further questions on this? Okay, we'll move on then to Buttercup Mead fencing, Fairfield play area and maintenance of all play areas. Over to you, Town Clerk.
Okay, so Sean, can you, before I talk about more obviously about the other play areas, do you just want to talk briefly about Buttercup Mead, about what's been going on there? Yeah.
Yep. So, but the Buttercup Mead fencing was originally delayed as a result of not being able to obtain materials quickly enough. There was a 14-week wait for the materials because there's clearly been a rush on fencing materials over the summer, people investing in their gardens. So there was a 14-week wait on getting some of the materials, but that fencing has been put up to an excellent standard. and is now complete.
Okay, so perhaps I can talk about the other play areas if that's okay. Can we talk about Fairfield first?
Before we move away from Buttercup Mead, can I just bring in the fact of the small play area there, which has been under discussion. It's very shabby. It's hardly used at all because of the close proximity to the Saxon Leisure Centre. And I was having a discussion with Bob before he left about, and he was talking to the Central Beds Council as to what we need to do to be able to remove it if we wish to remove it. And I'd like to make sure that this continues and isn't kicked into the long grass. We need to do something about that play area because it's very unsightly. I'll just put that on the record for the sake of it.
Okay, shall I respond?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this goes back to a comment I made 10 or 15 minutes ago, and I'd like to do this in a cohesive way. So all of our play areas need to be audited by the new public realm manager, all of them, properly, both in regard to the condition of the play equipment that we have and the general areas of our play areas. So Fairfield play area in particular, one of our other members pointed out to us the condition several weeks ago about the mossy area around the play area. That's since been sprayed. Yep. So our public realm team have been out there and they're doing that for all the play areas now. They're trying to catch up for over the winter period to make sure that it's safe for children to play when it's appropriate for children to gain access. But I think there's just a broader issue here that we need to try and get hold of. And once we've done a proper audit of all of our play areas, then I'd like officers to come back to members with some proper recommendations about doing this as in a cohesive whole, if that's appropriate with members.
Okay. Any questions on this? Councillor Leslie Fage.
I believe we were going to talk to the residents of Buttercup Mead to see if they had any preference or suggestions was what to do with that play area. And I don't know whether that's been followed up.
If I can just come back on that, we were trying to find out from Central Bedfordshire what we could actually do. Could we get rid of the play area if that's what we wanted to do? What was it possible to do? And we were unable to get a clear reply from Central Beds. Once we'd got a clear reply, the idea would be then to consult with the local residents to find out their thoughts on the matter. We could make a recommendation, but we wanted to get the information from Central Beds before we did that. That's what the situation is there.
I think there's a sequence of events here for everything, and that is Fairfield is one of our play areas that we need to focus on. Buttercup Mead is something we need to focus upon. But I'd like, as I said to you before, I'd like all of our play areas to be looked at in a cohesive way. And we need to do those three things. We need to A, make sure that they're in appropriately good condition. B, do we need to do any more investment in it? What do our residents actually want? Do they want the play areas where they are at the moment? And then we need to have the conversation with our neighbouring authority about what their view is as well. So there's a piece of work that needs to be done there before we can try and look at potentially what we need to do. So I think we will look at those areas, but let's try and wait if we can for our public realm manager to do it properly across the whole lot. Yeah.
Okay, if I can just come back and say I know that Councillor Grant Fage has been having communication with a resident over Franklin's, and he's got some comments on that. So all I say to Councillor Fage is what the town clerk has said, that we're going to review all the play areas, and that will be one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, moving on to item I, the Biggleswade 3G pitch. Town clerk, please.
So this is just really a reminder to members about where we are with the previous proposal. So if I recall, on the 17th of February, we wrote to Alan Young, the Chief Executive Officer, in response to his initial inquiry. We reminded him that there were potentially other sites on offer, particularly if I remember Eagle Farm Road or the lakes near Windermere Drive. And we asked him for his preference in regard to sites. We also wanted to understand why there was a particular preference. We recognise that there needed to be a feasibility study, and we're still awaiting a response from Mr. Young. but that was on the 17th of February. So I just wanted to reassure members that the matter hasn't gone away. It's there, and we're waiting for a response from Mr. Young, and then we'll progress the matter.
Councillor Strawn.
Thank you. I note that the progress that we're trying to make, but ironically, a couple of weeks later in the Biggleswade Chronicle, there was an article written representing the 3 town football clubs, expressing interest in the need for a 3G. And I wonder whether it would be appropriate for us to also liaise with them at this stage. And indeed with Stratton School, who's one of their representatives, attended the meeting when we discussed the Beds FA, because I think this is a wider thing. And I think that from experience with dealing with the Beds FA, it has taken us years to get here because we've had this on the table many years ago. And I think that sport is increasingly important, particularly with the effects of the pandemic. And I think that maybe combining with the sports clubs, the football clubs themselves, and indeed Stratton School, if they're expressing an interest, would be an appropriate way forward rather than just relying on the FA. And maybe a bit of pressure all round can actually make some positive progress because the town needs it.
Absolutely. Councillor Russell.
Could I just say that it's all very well saying rather than just relying on the FA, but the money will come from the Football Foundation for this. It won't come from anywhere else except a contribution from Section 106. So we do have to work with all the parties involved, including the FA.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on that matter? Councillor Grant-Fage.
Yeah, thank you for the update. It might just be worth giving Mr. Young a nudge, seeing as it has been a month since we've heard from him. And I'm sure he's a very busy man, but for us as a town, I think a 3G pitch is long overdue. And I think just from our perspective as a council, I wouldn't want him to think that we weren't keen to progress the conversation. So perhaps a gentle reminder to him so that we can keep these conversations going. You know, I think this is something that has the backing of council. So,
Town Clerk.
The only thing I would say is I would agree with Councillor Fage, but at the same time, I would also agree with Councillor Strawn. I think there are a wider set of stakeholders here, and we should try and have a cohesive conversation with as many of those stakeholders to try and encourage them to come to a kind of centralized view on things. But it's exciting, and it's reassuring that you know that people are prepared to make such a significant investment into our community. So the sooner that happens in the right place, the better, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions on that? Okay. Moving on then. Magnolia Place.
Okay. So before I hand over to Sean, this is some news where we are actually felling trees. So this is most definitely something that we've been doing. So Sean, over to you. Can you just do an update for members, please?
Of course, thank you. So the trees in question around Magnolia Place that were identified in some documents that were sent to our insurers were cut down yesterday. And we have had confirmation from the tree surgeon himself that those trees are definitely gone and that the owner of the property was happy with the result. The matter has been forwarded to the insurers, and we need to just confirm that those trees have been cut down now, which confirmation I had about half an hour ago, in fact, when the call started. So the tree surgeon has confirmed everything went smoothly and that the owner of the property was happy.
Okay. Any questions? Any further questions on that? Councillor Mark Foster.
Just in relation to Magnolia Place, I mean, I take it that's a point of another asset of ours. So is it a public realm matter for the town council, or is it something that we provided a service on behalf of someone else? I'm just keen to understand which part of Magnolia Place we're talking about and where our responsibility lies as a town council.
So
Town Clerk, you could elaborate on this.
Yeah, so without going into too much detail, which I think might be better picked up under exempt, yeah, the trees have been felled and were our responsibility to fell, and we're within the area that was our responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on then, unless there's any questions. Oh, Councillor Bond, I see, has his hand up.
I'll follow the same question in exempt as Councillor Mark Foster.
Okay, thank you. And the last item in this session under that heading, Drove Road Cemetery update. Town Clerk, please.
Just again wanted to reassure members that one of the priority areas for our public realm team at the moment is focusing on Drove Road Cemetery in the sense of making sure that we are maintaining the graves and the trees, particularly down the right hand side of the area. So 2 of our public realm staff have been busy clearing up each individual grave. We broke those down into different sections. We're also looking at where some graves have gone into disrepair, and we will, over a period of time, be writing to any relatives connected to those graves to see whether or not the families would like to maintain them, and we'll be reaching out to those families. In some instances, it may be that the families don't exist anymore, literally because Drove Road Cemetery is such an old cemetery. It does have loads of character, and it's a particular focus for us to make sure that it's as well maintained as possible. So I would encourage members, if you do have any time, conscious of COVID, to have a look around the cemetery and come back with your observations. But you should be noticing a noticeable difference. We've obviously had some recent visits there as well, some site visits, and we've taken the opportunity to talk to the residents who live nearby. So yes. And the second element connected to that is that we're in the process now of receiving quotations for the work at Drove Road, and people who've expressed an interest in regard to that are being showed around in the next 2 weeks, so that they can come back with relevant quotations, and those quotations can then be considered by members.
Thank you. Anything further on that? Any questions? In that case...
Yes, please.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Thank you. So I don't think the specification for those works has been shared. Would it be possible to share that with members of this committee, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Item 7, items for information, there are none. So we move on to public open session number 2. I see we still have Mr. John Ingray with us. If you want to say anything, Mr. Ingray, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, thank you. Can you, Sean, let Mr. Ingray in to speak? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ingray.
Thank you. It's been quite fascinating being part of the and seeing what goes on at the committee here. But I'm just slightly confused. As you know, I did raise the question about the internal roads. What was the actual decision of the council regarding the roads? It was mentioned, and then everybody agreed they were in a bad state. Could you confirm if there has been an actual decision?
The decision, and the town clerk will correct me if I'm wrong, is that we accept the responsibility as a town council to maintain the internal road for the allotments, and we are expecting Taylor Wimpey to live up to their promise to us to bring the roads up to scratch to cover for the damage that their vehicles have caused. But after that, the town council will take this on board and will maintain the roads to an acceptable standard. Is that it?
Thank you, Chairman.
Sean, would you mind just joining us again? Could you clarify for everybody's attention what work has already been completed?
So what I would class as the external road from the Taylor Wimpey site to the gate of the allotment. So the town council does have responsibility for maintaining that road. However, as a result of the trucks using the road, Taylor Wimpey was asked to assist with some of those repairs. They've done 3/4 of the road. There is 1/4 of the road that they haven't touched, which is why we've reached out to Central Bedfordshire Council to find out whether there was a reason for that, or whether or not they can be requested to finish the job properly. So we're waiting to hear back from Central Bedfordshire Council.
Okay. Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Ingray?
No, we have we've been in touch with Sean, and thank you for that, Sean. And I understand that some of the damage, that was caused by one of their lorries, but that's the external road, which is nominally Central Beds in any case, but it's the internal roads as well that people are concerned with, and for disabled access. We do have some members who are have limited ability of getting around, but who really value the allotments. So, safe access for them is one of our concerns as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's understood. Town Clerk.
I would like to add also that members may be aware that several weeks ago, a concrete mixer truck almost turned completely over and was almost at a 45-degree angle going down there. So there is some more significant damage other than the damage to the road that we need to engage with Taylor Wimpey on. And this is not a simple fitting in job. There's quite significant damage there. And we need to carry on that conversation with them and Central Beds to encourage that to be put right. Sean, would you like to just to reiterate that? Yeah.
Yes, so again, that's one of the issues that we are liaising with Central Bedfordshire Council on and awaiting their response.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that now, Mr. Ingrain?
Thank you very much. Yes. And Councillor Bond, I have a reply to your question regarding the use of the Drove Road facility. This is not an allotment matter, but I can refer to the church one. I'll refer outside the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we now come to an exempt item. This part of the meeting is now finished. Thank you everyone for attending, and rejoin again in a few minutes for the exempt session. Thank you very much.